All right, Chair, we are live and we are recording.
Good evening and welcome to the April 22nd, 2021 Design Commission regular video meeting. It is 6:04 p.m. Pacific time and the the Design Commission meeting is now in session. My name is Rich Irwin and I am the Design Commission Chair. Tonight's virtual Design Commission meeting is being brought to you using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel. CPT Director Jeff Thomas, Senior Planner Robin Propsting, and other staff members are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or using Zoom teleconferencing applications. Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us this evening. Commissioners, please ensure that your microphones are turned on for the roll call. We will be conducting the roll call votes so that we accurately capture each person's vote. Vice Chair Brandt.
Present.
Commissioner Grambois.
Present.
Commissioner McPherson is out. Commissioner Perez.
Present.
Commissioner Soprano is out. Commissioner Czar.
Present.
Thank you. For this meeting, we continue to utilize the Zoom platform. I will do my best to recognize you in the order in which hands are raised. After being recognized, you may then ask your question. Commissioners, as we have been doing, please limit yourself to one question and to one clarifying question so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before the next round of questions by commissioners. The first item of business is to review and consider approving the February 24th, 2021 minutes. Before entertaining any motions, I want to mention that Governor Inslee's proclamation number 20-28 regarding the Open Public Meetings Act was extended indefinitely until the end of the emergency. Please have a look at the minutes. Let me know if someone wishes to put forward a motion regarding the minutes of the February 24th, 2021 meeting.
Chair, I'd like to note for the record, there was a Scrivener's error in the minutes. I incorrectly referenced the exhibit that was approved and said exhibit 1 instead of 3 or 3 instead of 1, and I've already corrected that.
Okay, thank you. We'll just note that we'll be accepting the minutes with modifications.
And then also for the record, Commissioner Soprano has joined us.
Oh, welcome, sir.
Thanks.
I've got a question about the conditions of approval. My memory, and I actually don't have the copy right here, but my memory of the general list of what we approved was shorter than the list that's been put forward here in the meeting notes. And I'd just like to see if I could get some clarification about that. Some of the items that we did specifically speak about, including sort of the reduction in the white siding on the north side of the building, that's all been captured. But there were some additional items that I don't believe were on the list that were part of the official motion. And I may be wrong about that, and I'd just like to get clarification before voting.
I included all of the recommended conditions that were included in the packet. When I went and rewatched the video, I didn't hear anything where we pulled out any of those conditions, so I included them all in the minutes.
Okay, so the things like about the landscaping maintenance, and that's a standard one, but there was something about low-lying branches, excuse me, over walkways and things like that. That was all part of the original conditions.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was all part of the packet.
Okay, super, thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Do we have a motion regarding the February 24th, 2021 minutes?
Yeah, I will move to approve the meeting minutes as recorded, but as modified per Andrea's comments about the Scrivener's error.
Do I have a second?
A second.
With second, thank you. There is a motion by Vice Chair Brandt and a second by Commissioner Perez. Andrea, please conduct a roll call vote on the minutes.
Commissioner Grambois,
Approved.
Commissioner Perez,
Approved.
Vice Chair Brandt,
Proof.
Commissioner Czar,
Approved.
Chair Irwin,
Approved.
and Commissioner Soprano.
Approved.
Minutes passed
Okay,
6-0.
Thank you. The motion passes and the minutes are approved. We now move to the appearances portion of our agenda, where individuals wishing to speak live during our meeting may do so by telephone or by using the Zoom teleconferencing application. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Design Commission on any item. All remarks will be addressed to the Commission as a whole and not to individual Commission members or to individual staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the Commission, I will request that that person leave the meeting. When it is your turn to address the Commission, be sure to speak audibly and state your name first for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Andrea, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the Commission?
Yes, Chair. First person we have signed up to speak for appearances is Jake Jacobson.
Thank you.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Design Commissioners, I'm Jake Jacobson, a 32-year resident of Mercer Island. Although I'm a member of the Mercer Island City Council, my remarks are personal, do not represent the City of Council's position. The purpose of my remarks is to express my concern and that of many members of this community about the sloppy and incomplete manner in which the application for the Shanghai project has been evaluated and processed. Tonight's regular business is supposedly to provide, quote, clarifying information for the Shanghai design review, close quote. No clarification has been given why the minutes have not been have been changed from the recording of the meeting. Exhibits 3, 10, 11, and 12 have been changed in certain material respects, and yet the Commission has not even been asked to vote on them. Why not? Shanghai application to the city indicated that it had been there had been a laundromat on the site. On January 25, 2021, the city had issued a SEPA modified determination of non-significance with a mitigation condition requiring some work by an archaeologist. As it turns out, there was a dry cleaner operating on this site for many years. When the city was asked about this, the answer on April 12th was, do you have any historical knowledge that a dry cleaner was located here and when? Had anyone bothered to visit the site, the cleaner's sign on the building should have raised red flags. Common sense and understanding of SEPA requirements, as well as environmental best practice, would have dictated requiring the applicant to perform and submit environmental assessments. The on-again, off-again Finnegan approach to the parking requirements of the project is also illustrative of slipshod evaluation of the Shanghai project application. The March 30, 21 revised plan sheets and its parking study submitted for the first time for this meeting are inconsistent. Has anyone checked the materials in submitted to the Commission for consistency, code compliance, let alone exercise common sense? What's the city buying? From a holistic approach, what consideration has been given to parking realities? The applicant states that it will charge $200 per month separately over and above the unit rental price for each residential space. Data from other town center family projects indicate that with even lower parking charges, $170 a month and below, many parking spaces go unrented. Are there simply fewer resident vehicles in these buildings? A simple town center parking census would answer this question and probably tell us that some or many of these building residents actually park on downtown streets or in private parking lots to avoid the extra cost. I and many others respectfully suggest it would be reasonable to expect much greater breadth and thoroughness in evaluating and processing permit parking information in applications of this sort. We can and must do better. We respectfully request the following Design Commission actions. Require a revised SEPA determination for the site and incorporate the findings as a permit condition. 2, require identification of the code provision permitting, quote, flex parking. Require a town center parking census. 4, Submit a clear and consistent permit package for further consideration by the Design Commission. Remand the permit application to the CPD to accomplish 1 through 4 above and scrub the materials upon which a building permit is to be based for correctness, completeness, consistency, and accuracy for approval by the Design Commission. 6, distribute the revised permit application to the Design Commission in the public at least 10 calendar days prior to commission considerations. We appreciate and understand the difficult task to attempt to sort through this incomplete and inconsistent materials on such important issues as these. I and my many residents very much appreciate and are grateful for your service on this and other matters coming for your analysis and decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Andrea, is there anyone else?
Yes, sir. The next person to speak is Mr. Victor Racy. Victor, are you there? I just promoted you, so you should be able to turn on your camera.
There I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Members of the Design Commission, my name is Victor Rashis. I'm a Mercer Island resident. My family's lived on Mercer Island for the last 50 years. I'm appearing before you today to express my concerns regarding the Tsinghua development project. You should have all received my comments emailed to you yesterday. I also emailed you comments prior to your previous meeting, and I've made comments on the project during the public comment period. I'll echo the comments of Mr. Jacobson, who spoke before me. The review and the oversight for this project has been lightweight and deserves a closer look. Tonight's meeting packet states that the Design Commission gave every indication of confidence in understanding the proposal to be voted on and ultimately approved. It's unclear to me how that's possible, given that the materials that were provided to you in the previous meeting packet had inconsistent information and at least 3 different sets of numbers for items including total number of units, retail square footage, restaurant square footage, total number of parking stalls, number of residential parking stalls, and number of commercial parking stalls. In addition, during the last Design Commission meeting, I listened to a lengthy discussion on paint color and brick color. While aesthetics are important, there were several equally important issues that were not discussed or considered, including whether the use of flex parking meets city code parking requirements, the previous presence of a dry cleaners on the premises and what the mitigation plan was for potential contamination of the site, and a town center economic benefit in the findings of fact section of the meeting packet that was completely fabricated with no factual basis or analysis. I respectfully request that the Design Commission give this project the thorough review that it deserves. And I'll echo the request that Mr. Jacobson made before me in terms of the specifics on what's requested of the Design Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea, do we have anybody else?
Next up, Chair, is Meg Lippert. Meg, I just promoted you to panelist. You should be able to turn on your camera now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Meg.
Okay, thank you. Design Commissioners, thank you for your service. I expect that you volunteered to serve on this commission in order to benefit the citizens of Mercer Island, to approve buildings that add beauty and functionality to our island, and to continue the traditions that have made Mercer Island a desirable place to buy a home, raise a family, and/or to grow old in place. I'm speaking with you today to implore you to focus on 2 issues with respect to the current design submitted for the Tsinghua project. And I also re-echo the comments made by the 2 previous speakers requesting that you postpone decisions on this and continue to research the issues that they raise. So my 2 issues are: first, our City Council is committed to building and maintaining a town center that is welcoming and attractive to residents and visitors. One of the aspects of our community that homeowners value and that also attracts visitors to our island is the convenience of shopping on our island that is provided by sufficient retail space. So I'm concerned that the Tsinghua project proposed design retail space has been reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced. What was initially anticipated to be 16,000 square feet, as reported by the Mercer Island Reporter in January 2019, was then reduced, oops, I lost my, sorry, was then reduced to only 13,880 square feet of retail space, as reported in a March 2021 Mercer Island Reporter article, which was then further reduced, according to current information on Let's Talk Mercer Island, to 10,742 square feet of retail space, and which currently is only 7,579 square feet of retail space, according to the plans included with the 422 Design Commission agenda, which was highlighted in the recent email that Ashley Hay sent to you. Requiring so little retail space in a huge town center apartment complex is a disservice to islanders who value a lively and vibrant town center that provides convenient access to shopping without leaving the island. Also, of course, vibrant island businesses attract island visitors who spend money here, as well as providing job opportunities for local residents. My first question to you is, what is your justification for requiring so little retail square footage in the Tsinghua project? My second question pertains to protecting our environment, which is also a priority identified by the city and which islanders value. Today, especially, Earth Day, is a time to focus on environmental pollution and cleaning up toxic waste on our island. With the known presence of a former dry cleaning business on the proposed Tsinghua building site, what requirements are in place for the developer to test for pollution and to remove any contamination from the site prior to approval of the plans? I trust that you are reading all of the material that the residents have researched and shared with you pertaining to challenges and negative consequences of the proposed Tsinghua project design. I hope that you do not hasten to approve plans that violate citizens' trust in you, that could have dire consequences for future islanders and present islanders, and or that would put the city at risk for liability in the future. Thank you.
Next up, Chair, we have Robin Russell. Robin,
Thank you.
promoted you to panelist. You should be able to turn on your camera and microphone now.
Can you see me?
Yes. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. Dear Design Commission members, firstly, thank you for your service. My name is Robin Russell, and I am a baby resident islander. I have lived here for 6 going on 7 years. But in that time, it has been surprising to me how many big private industry projects have attempted to come into our community. Micah in Mercerdale, Micah near the sculpture garden with a mixed use project. Most recently, the sorting facility for the thrift shop expansion. And each and every time these projects have seemed to sailed through whatever program they have to go up and ask permission. And then near the bitter end, when the contract is ready to be signed or when the bulldozer is ready to bulldoze, then the citizens are notified of this. So my first concern about this project, as well as past, is the lack of transparency and the lack of notification. I have heard that the reason the notification for this project was, I don't know, delayed or not done properly is because of the pandemic. And that may or may not be the case, but that, in my estimation, then you should increase the notification so that citizens know well ahead of time and don't have to spend their hard-earned money or time in fighting these projects that they don't think are good for the communities. Fortunately, those 3 projects that I just mentioned were not built in for good reasons. My second concern is the reduction in commercial space, and Meg and others have already mentioned that, so I'll just echo their comments. I, for one, don't want to be forced to drive off island, causing more traffic issues for Mercer Islanders to go shopping or go to restaurants. And I would encourage the commission to increase retail and not decrease it. My biggest concern is the lack of parking and the lack of parking per resident for this new project, as well as retail parking. I'm one of the few, I suspect I'm the only one. Maybe some commissioners live in the city center, but I'm not sure about that, but I do. And so this, is intimately affects me and my enjoyment of my community. I live on 29th and 76th, so just outside of the core, but basically in the core. And as I've seen new projects come in, such as New Seasons, when they came in, they were parking all the way up 29th, all the way to the end in front of my home, and where we had finally got the city to come out and put no parking paint on there, but it just exploded. And this project is going to be right between Metropolitan Market and QFC. QFC is already a nightmare. Metropolitan has lots of parking, but it's soon going to diminish. I mean, I just know how people park and want to use their cars. I lived in Seattle for 35 years, and it's not unusual in some of those communities for residents to park 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks away if they think that's normal. So I would just hate to have a huge project like this go in and not have sufficient parking. So I implore you to make sure that happens, as well as cost-effective parking. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good rest of your evening.
And Chair, we have one more person who signed up to speak, Tom Acker. Tom, I just promoted you to a panelist. You should be able to turn on your camera and microphone now.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. I have no idea how to start my video. Got it. All right, so hopefully you can see me.
We can, sir.
Okay, this is like the second time I've been in front of this commission related to this project, and I think there are 4 things that's important for the design commission to understand. And I know Colin Brandt, Vice Chair Colin Brandt, is very intimately aware with this because he and I had a lot of discussions, and he was the one that helped put the brakes on the Hines project before it was turned into the Shanghai project. And Commissioner Perez and Commissioner Grambaugh also served on the Town Center Visioning Committee with me many years ago when these types of development issues started coming up. So I would strongly encourage you all to look back at the history of this site. And what happened is about 1,000 residents wrote in. Commissioner Brandt put his hand on the binder and said, at a certain point, we have to represent the citizens and not the developers. And he hit the nail on the head with that. I think more people are aware now of the development concerns. There are a lot more people. We don't want to have to go through a whole nother change.org thing to really elevate this issue. But I think that in addition to the SEPA requirements, but parking and retail are critical to the development of the town center and the growth of our community. And when I talk about growth, I'm talking about how to curtail the demise of retail. With every single big project that's been done, we've lost retail. We had 6 or 7 restaurants over in a space where across from QFC. Now there's a Noah's Bagels. And what has happened is we end up getting more professional services, but no retail. Not only that, parking is eliminated, or the parking becomes so small that people don't want to use it. And I don't even think I've ever used the parking garage where Dawn Bova has her dentistry thing. I always park across the street in somebody else's parking lot, walk across. It's psychological. Anthony Perez, or Commissioner Perez, knows this better than most. The second thing is, I think it's important to understand and get clarification in the code. Parking has been the top priority for citizens for years. And I started doing the math, and it's so squirrely in that packet, I don't even understand it, quite honestly. But it looks like they're getting away with putting in 65 fewer spaces than what the code recommends. Now, granted, my math skills may be wrong, but I can't even understand the packet. I don't understand what the term flex parking means. And I think it's important to hold them to the code and also understand what you're approving. And you really need to get into the details of that packet. And then finally, I don't think you should prove anything if it doesn't make sense and isn't congruent with what the community feedback has been. Now, granted, I'm a free market capitalist, and if they build a project within the rights of the law, then it is what it is. But I think they're getting another big corporate development giveaway. And that's been the problem with these projects for years. And we've, as a community, voiced our opinions. We've made some steps forward. We've protected Luther Burbank. That was one of the three main goals of Save Our Suburbs. The other was to stop the Heinz project, and the other was to stop the bus station and bus intercept on the north end of the island. Now they're reneging on that, and now we're finding out that the former Heinz project, now the Shanghai project, may be getting by with avoiding the provisions that we had tried so hard as a community to put in place. So I would strongly encourage all of you to understand the history, demand clarity in the code, understand what you're approving, and then don't approve it if it doesn't make sense. I do appreciate all of your service, and I wish you all well on this project, and reach out to me independently if there's any other additional information that I can provide. Thank you.
Chair, that was the last person who signed up to speak.
Thank you, Andrea. As there are no further appearances, we will move on to the next agenda item. The next item of business is a review of clarifying information for DSR 20-001 Tsinghua mixed-use building. Senior Planner Robin Probsting will provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Robin Probsting. I'm your Senior Planner. Also present here are John Davies from the firm KPG, who is the city's contracted third-party transportation planner, and also Megan McKay and Lou Zhang from Johnston Architects, representing the applicant, are present. I will share my screen here one moment. I've prepared a brief presentation. Let's see, can everyone see the slide over here?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So the only item on the agenda tonight is the discussion of the Shanghai project, on which the Design Commission held the public hearing on February 24th. Recall the Design Commission took action at the public hearing and voted to approve the design review application for the Shanghai project. There were materials from different points in the review process in the packet. And this is typical. Projects tend to evolve over the course of the review process in response to staff comments. So for instance, the project did start out proposing 164 apartment units. Over the course of review, as the project evolved, the design landed on 159 apartment units as one example. The purpose of this meeting is to clarify what the final proposal was. And to that end, I requested revised plan sheets and a transportation impact analysis from the applicant to show the final design. At the public hearing on February 24th, it said 203 parking spaces were proposed, which was the number of spaces in the that the transportation impact analysis concluded would be needed for the commercial space plus 160 apartment units. But recall, only 159 apartment units are proposed. So the actual number of spaces now proposed is 202, which is based on the revised transportation impact analysis included in your packet as attachment 2. The transportation impact analysis documents how 202 spaces will provide sufficient parking for the proposed commercial space and 159 apartment units. The transportation impact analysis was peer reviewed by the city's third-party transportation planning reviewer. So not only does the applicant team have their own transportation planner who supplied an analysis for review, but also the city contracts with a transportation planning firm who reviews and checks the applicant's submission. So the city's third-party reviewer provided confirmation of the analysis in attachment 3 of your packet. Is this making sense so far? Are there any questions I can answer?
Good, thank you.
Oh.
Commissioner Grambois?
On page 35 of the packet, the memo from John Davies to Patrick Yamashito. Last paragraph, the applicant should provide written documentation to clarify the parking supply with the city. Do we have that?
I'm getting caught up with you. One moment, I just brought up is this the parking management plan recommendation? Pardon me.
The last paragraph on page 35 of the memo from KPG to Patrick in the city.
Pardon me, let me get caught up. Could you read it one more time?
The applicant should provide written documentation to clarify the parking supply with the city. So right now in the packet, we have your numbers, 90, 43, 69. In the plan sheet, you have 93, 43, 69. And in the parking analysis, there is a different set of numbers, 143.59 on page 13 in the packet.
Is this from tonight's packet or is it from the public hearing packet?
Today's packet that was online for the Design Commission.
Okay. Bear with me one moment and I will make sure I'm looking at the same thing.
Would it be helpful to just share your screen related to what you're looking at and then,
Are you talking?
That would be.
I actually don't have, I have taken notes, so I don't have it on my screen. I can give you page numbers from our packet today.
Okay, but to clarify, Commissioner Grumbar, you're talking about the memorandum page near the bottom, 4 columns, correct?
Page 35 from our packet today, last paragraph. The applicant should provide written documentation to clarify the parking supply with the city. But either
That is the last paragraph of the memorandum page.
Yes.
Robin, would you like me to bring it up?
I just got it. So the March 30th plan set is attachment 1, and that does show the parking supply is shown in the right-hand column, and that.
Robin, you're not displaying that page, just so you know.
Okay, pardon me.
Page 8 in our packet.
Let's see, is this displaying?
Yes, that's the page.
Okay. So these, both of these, the total, I have future slides to unpack the parking standards, but they do comply. This total of 202 spaces does comply with the city's code. Would it help to continue? And I do have a slide on this.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pardon me.
Before we move on, Commissioner Czar, you had your hand up as well.
I just, before you got into the discussion about parking, planner, Robin, I see you in parentheses, Robin. I just wanted to clarify the meeting notes that we just approved said that it was 5 approvals and 1 abstained, and then there was, in your previous slide, it said 6-0. And so I just wanted to confirm one way or the other, or clarify that before moving forward, as it seems to potentially be a discrepancy.
Thank you for pointing that out. Coordinate to make sure that the minutes accurately reflect the February 24th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The vote from the February 25th meeting was 5-0-1. So 5 yeas, 0 no's, and 1 abstention, and we had 1 commissioner absent.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying, Andrian. So I'll jump ahead to the, I want to make sure I get to your question, but I also want to make sure I cover everything. I'll briefly just go over what the exhibits are, then I'll unpack how we got to the total of 202 spaces. If that is acceptable? Okay, thank you. There are 4 documents that from the staff report exhibits that are updated with 3 new documents, and those are the 3 attachments to your memo. So attachment 1 consists of updated plan sheets, which show the actual parking. Those show 202 spaces, and the commercial space. So the total commercial space and the total number of spaces aligns with the commercial spaces used in the TIA, the Transportation Impact Analysis. Attachment 2 is an updated Exhibit 10 and 11, which provides analysis showing how 202 parking spaces is the right amount for commercial space plus 159 apartment units. And then Attachment 3 shows an updated Exhibit 12, which is a review memo from the city's third-party transportation planner, which confirms the analysis in Attachment 2. And so to a breakdown of how the parking total was arrived at, first wanted to say a few words about the term flex spaces and how those figured into the parking calculation, because I'm hearing that there's some confusion about that. Shared parking is a term used in the city's code, and it means something different than flex parking. Shared parking is a term used in the city's code that allows for a reduction of up to 50% of the parking that would otherwise be required by code. So for instance, if a mixed-use building hypothetically needed 100 parking spaces, the shared parking code provision could be conceivably used to provide only 50 spaces if supported by a parking demand study. So under the code, a building could provide fewer stalls than otherwise required by the code by up to 50%. This is not being proposed for this project. Flex parking spaces, on the other hand, mean something different. Here, that refers to parking spaces that can be used by either a resident or a retail customer or a restaurant patron. They're spaces that are not reserved for just one type of user. So the analysis provided by the project transportation planner in the updated exhibits 10 and 11 shows 59 parking spaces, which at peak demand would provide 90% occupancy. So 90% of the spaces would be full, meaning that even when demand is at its highest, there would still be free parking spaces. The proposed new plan sheets in Exhibit 3 proposed even more flex spaces, 69. So providing an estimated 82% during peak demand, providing even more assurance that the peak parking demand will be met. I'll stop there for questions. Is this addressing the question? So I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions. Yes.
Mr. Grambois?
I was hoping you could do the math with me on how the number of stalls were determined for retail and restaurants. And if we can all agree that a stall needs to be a whole number.
Yes. Wondering if it would be helpful. Could I bring up your email, Commissioner Granbaugh, from earlier? Would you be okay with that, just to have a visual?
Sure.
Okay, 1 second here.
Or if it's easier, just to point me to the section where the applicant can round down, if that's easier. That answers my question.
So the crux of that is that unfortunately the code doesn't provide a methodology for rounding, which is going to be a code update, I think. So I thought this was really helpful because the square footage of the retail and restaurant was laid out here. If these numbers are rounded down to the nearest whole number, that yields the 43 spaces that are proposed for the commercial space. 43 plus 159 for apartment units is the 202.
I don't dispute that.
Right. And so, and here rounding up, of course, that yields 44. And then if these numbers are rounded to the nearest whole number, the total is 44. So here, unfortunately, the code doesn't, as it does with other kinds of, like with trees or with affordable apartment units, there is a prescribed way in which to round. Unfortunately, here there is not. But
So
as proposed, the code is met. Pardon me, I apologize.
No, I was just going to say, so if we look at what I hear you saying is that if we follow what the code says today, that 45 commercial stalls would be required because there's no provision for rounding.
No, that's not quite what I said. I think this math is correct, but the applicant proposed 43 as part of the transportation impact analysis.
But
There's no basis.
The code doesn't allow for any deviation for commercial parking. Residential is a different issue because if you go to the actual, I'm sorry, I thought I had the code up. The actual code allows the director of CPD to have a deviation, but there is not the same deviation for commercial parking in the code.
And there's no deviation being requested.
Well, I guess by the math, I don't think Excel's lying, right? 15.15, if it's required 2 stalls per square footage divided by 1,000, and you have a number that's not a whole number, in order to meet that requirement, you have to go up.
I don't know if the code doesn't specify that numbers must always be rounded up. We're adding information there. So I don't think it's necessarily true that they would have to be rounded up in every scenario.
Does the code allow us to have 1/5 of this parking stall?
It sets the number, a minimum for a range for each type of use. Where there are fractions, it doesn't specify on which way to round them or how to round them.
Sure. If I can jump in for a second. What we're seeing here on the screen, there's kind of 3 legs on this rounding stool here that we're discussing right now. The first leg was the proposed 43 stalls, which clearly this math is correct. That's on the screen. There's no disputing that. The 43 stalls, the fractional requirement was rounded down in both line items. In what you're seeing here on the screen, the fractional requirement is being rounded up in both cases. So a 0.158 and a 0.635. And the third leg on the stool here is to add the 2 code requirements together. So the 15.158 and the 28.635 and round that up, which would actually then give you a final number of 44.
That's not what the code says.
We've got 3 different numbers, a 43, a 45, and a 44. The 43 is what was submitted by the applicant, and then we've got this, and then we've got the third part. So I think the applicant might be able to address this at the end of the presentation a little bit further. So I would propose we sidebar this for a couple of minutes, and then we can come back and have the applicant join us for the remainder of this discussion to finish it off. And then the design commission can consider the matter at that point.
So Jeff, can I just ask one quick point of clarification? What I'm hearing, I think, from you and from Robin is that there's no definition of how to round in the code, and that's something that's going to be addressed in a future code amendment. But right now, frankly, the applicant has what I'm hearing has within their purview the ability to either round up or round down as they see fit. Is that a fair assessment of where the code sits right now?
The code is silent on rounding for parking. So that is actually where we sit. I would like to have the commission discuss this a little bit further here this evening, and also have the applicant jump in to supplement and inform the conversation as well. So, Chair, I think if we can move through the final couple of slides here, we can come back to this with the applicant, and then we can pursue the matter a little bit further here.
Okay, so Robin, would you like to continue, please?
Yeah, and this is all I have prepared. So this is a great segue right into any questions the Design Commission would like to discuss.
Okay. We are open for questions, folks.
Robin, I have a question. What I heard you say in the analysis that the city's done and that the applicant has done through their professional team, and that's been confirmed or at least clarified by the city's third party, is that there aren't any shared parking stalls proposed by the applicant.
Correct. Both the minimum requirements for both the residential and commercial portions of the project can be met by meeting the standards in the code, but the minimum number of stalls required by code. The shared parking provision I described earlier is not being used.
Okay, so we have 202 stalls currently proposed. Just so I'm clear and everyone's clear about the definition of shared parking, is that if they met the criteria that, transportation analyses and that kind of thing would dictate, it would be possible then for them to come in for as little as half of the total that they're applying for right now. So 101 stalls is technically possible if all these other criteria are met. I'm not saying that would happen, but that's the definition of shared parking would kind of lead you to that math, all the other considerations aside.
That's correct.
Okay.
The shared parking provision allows a reduction of up to 50% if supported by analysis. But again, that's not being requested here.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Can we, or maybe before we move on to a different subject, Chair, can we ask the project applicant to jump in here and to speak to the parking numbers a little bit? I think that might be helpful for all of us, and then we can certainly continue this discussion or switch to another question.
Certainly, we would love to hear the applicant speak.
Hi, I'm Megan McKay. I'm a partner at Johnson Architects, and I represent the applicant for this project. I just want to say that it is our full intention as a team to comply with all code requirements on this project. And in the spirit of compliance, we'd like to offer we can fit in one additional parking stall in our garage. And so we'd like to, offer 203 parking stalls to add one additional dedicated commercial stall to the project.
So we would go from 43 to 44 commercial stalls.
Yes, sir.
And we would go from 202 to 203 parking stalls total.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any other questions or yes?
There, I see a hand from Commissioner Granbois.
Hi, I'm wondering how we can vote on something, the flex parking that's not in our code. What are we supposed to base our analysis on?
So
anything in our code regarding flex parking?
The code is silent on flex parking, but it basically that just means the code isn't saying either this, these specific spaces must be reserved for one type of user and otherwise be kept empty at all times. nor does the code say that all spaces have to be open to everyone at all times. It doesn't dictate how each individual space needs to be used. What the code regulates is you need to have this minimum number for these types of land uses. So that standard is met, but the code doesn't specify how parking is managed in that way, if that makes sense. So flex parking is allowed. It's actually, I think it's a good best practice for a mixed use building. But because it's not specified one way or another, does not mean it can't be done.
Just to make sure we've got folks here on the call that are able to speak to these questions that are coming up. Is John still with us on the call from KPG?
Yes, I am.
There you are, John. Hi. John, would you be able to speak to this flex parking and kind of peak demand a little bit further as a concept in your work that you do and the types of reviews that you do for this sort of thing?
Right. So the way that parking for a mixed use development is looked at is really from two elements. One is what the code is requiring, which if it's, there's so many based on the range that's in the code, it's going to be how many parking spaces the retail requires, how much for the restaurant use, how much for the residential. And the number, those things separately, it meets the code requirement. Then there's the other consideration, which is sort of the real world aspect of parking demand and how all those uses might interact with one another. So like, for example, during a large part of the day, a lot of the residential spaces will be empty. In the evening, residential spaces will tend to be occupied, whereas retail really has almost a reverse profile and restaurants probably somewhere in between. So one of the things that we wrote numerous letters and had those guys worked with the applicant's consulting firm to clarify was how does that demand really affect the various uses? And the idea that they presented was, well, we can get a little buffer by not having all our residential spaces be dedicated to 100% residential. So typically what you do in an apartment building is you'd have the residential area completely gated off. And whether there was a car in that space, no one else could use that. That was that resident's space. So the idea of this flex parking is it's just an available space to meet the demand that would be met based on the profiles of how that parking will get used. So this is kind of giving a little bit of advantage to the flex parking, gives an advantage to being able to get above whatever the what is really required by code. So the code's really at a bottom level, and the question really got to, can we really account for what's going to happen with the retail and the restaurant if we just build this at a minimum code requirement? And so this analysis came up, and we asked them, well, at first they had it at 100%. Then we came back and said, well, we typically would like 80 or 90% because that way people can find an available space. They're not like circling around in the garage waiting for someone to pull out. And so the more flexible spaces that were created, it's really to the advantage of the commercial and retail uses.
So to package all that up maybe into a sentence or two, the shared parking that Robin referred to earlier is actually a reduction in the actual physical number of stalls that are being provided by the project under what the code requires. That is not the case here. These flex stalls are intended, I guess, John, I call it surge demand, but maybe that's not quite the right technical term. But we've got the number of parking stalls per the code requirement, and then these flex stalls are intended to swing maybe back and forth a little bit so that at night, once the commercial retail component of this project that we're talking about here is closed up for the night, those are residential spots that are available through into the next day till whatever time you get to that peak demand or that surge demand period, where then some of those residential stalls open up for commercial use for a specified window of time in the day, and then it closes again to go back to residential. Is that, John, inaccurate? And then when you speak to 80 or 90%, what you're speaking to is providing enough flex stalls so that the peak demand or the surge demand never overflows itself. That surge demand can be accommodated with on-site parking. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay.
The one aspect of it is really in the implementation of it, where there wouldn't necessarily be for these flex spaces, say between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. that residents weren't allowed to park in those spaces. They would be available for anybody during that time, yes. So I want to make sure that was clear. So really what this is getting at a little bit is, because the development is really meeting the minimum range of every part of the code requirement as it is in 1911-130. One of the things that we asked them to take a really harder look at is, well, if you're going to build it at the minimum, are we going to be seeing a lot of spillover effects where people are going to want to end up parking on city streets, and you need to justify whether or not your parking can meet the demand required. And so that was that sort of peak demand analysis that was conducted.
Mr. Grandbois?
I have 3 follow-up questions. Robin, is sorry for that extra noise. Is the flex parking something that's going to be updated in the code to be added? The definition?
Not aware of any plans to. I don't think it's
Actually, I'm happy to chime in there for a quick second to help answer that question. Commissioner, you may or may not be aware, and the Design Commission may or may not be aware, the City Council has programmed for its 2021-2022 work program to undertake, I don't want to say a parking study because there have been previous parking studies, so perhaps a parking study update or refresher for the town center. And there is going to be a session with City Council. I believe it's scheduled for May 18th at a study session with City Council where staff and the City Council will be having a discussion about scope of that study. So I certainly anticipate, given the airtime that shared and flex parking has gotten here, not only with this project, but in the town center in general over time a little bit, that will certainly be a discussion item with the City Council as to their druthers to include this as part of that scope, if that's helpful to you.
My other two questions are, is Xinhua planning to charge for commercial and flex parking? And then follow up to that is, will residents be charged when they use the flex parking after it's no longer being used for commercial during the day? So at night, after, I guess, restaurant closes.
Those
Could we
are,
maybe, Robin, could we maybe have the applicant address that question? That'd be great.
sure, absolutely.
Hi, Megan again. There's going to be, there's a parking management plan that has been submitted to the city. And there will be a higher charge for residents to use the private residential only garage. They'll be charged more to have their own parking space. They'll be charged slightly less if they want a permit for the flex spaces, because the flex spaces will be limited to 2-hour use during the daytime. And if you want to park overnight as a resident, you'll need to have a paid permit, but it'll cost less than the secured parking. And no, the commercial stalls are not, visitor and commercial stalls are not charged. They're free. Is that
Commissioner Czar?
I think a
Commissioner Czar.
question came up earlier regarding that parking management plan that was referenced at the last paragraph of the KPG memo. Is that under the Design Commission's purview to review and approve, or is that something that is just being charged by the staff? Is there a need for us to have visibility to specifically review and approve that, or?
So a couple thoughts. I think it is I'm checking, but a condition of approval, which was added to the the design review approval. I'm not sure if it could be. Jeff, do you have thoughts on that? My thought is that the parking standard in the town center regulations are, meet the minimum number. Something like a parking management plan is a technical type of review, and there are not specific code standards that, would be part of design review. But Jeff, do you have any thoughts on, if the design commission could have a role?
Robin, if I could chime in, this is Beal.
Oh, thank you, Beal.
Beal Park City Attorney. I agree with you. I believe that that is outside the scope of the commission, and that's more incumbent on staff to ensure that the proposal is reasonable for the intended use.
As a follow-up, it's my understanding that there are no deviations from code compliance as well related to parking, and except for maybe this rounding question, which it sounds might be mitigated with an additional stall. But within our capabilities, our responsibility, just so we're sure to understand it, I think, is to be sure we understand what's being provided and how it is compliant, but knowing that there are no requests for deviations from that. Am I correct in saying
That is correct. Yes, so there is a minimum number of stalls required for each type of land use here, which are retail, restaurant, and residential. And the project as designed meets the minimum requirement for all of those land uses put together, with no shared parking reduction, no kind of deviation. And the applicant has just offered to add even another stall on top of that.
And so the flex parking as confirmed by KPG offers an enhancement in a sense to retail parking scope.
Correct. The flex stalls are stalls which different types of users, so residential, retail, restaurant, can use. in contrast, a different setup would be to have, if you had 0 flex stalls and only dedicated parking for each of those land uses, only say residents could park in one set of stalls, and then they would have to be kept empty all day otherwise. With a flex stall system, as needed, as different types of users enter and leave the site, they can use these flex spaces.
But the base number of the retail spaces remain the same and are provided. Those
The minimum required by the code is still provided, correct?
If I can just quickly jump in to supplement that commissioner's question a little bit. So I think there's two things in play here. One is the peak or the surge demand that John spoke to a few minutes ago, right? And then I think the other part of it is trying to, take that portion of the structured parking and maximize the use of it too. So there's surge demand capacity that is, being created, but then there's also the fact that you've got these parking stalls, and some of them, no doubt, especially ones that are. I think Megan referred to the fact there is some separation in the parking structure where there's some residential parking that commercial would not have access to, likely on another floor, right, of the structure. But for these stalls that we are discussing, trying to maximize the use of that structured parking is certainly, a positive thing to look at.
Do we have any other questions from my fellow commissioners?
I have one more question. Was there a distinction made between retail and restaurant in the overall consideration of the surge or peak hours? Considering that there is dedicated restaurant space as opposed to retail space, which could have typically different hours.
Yes, there was those in terms of the peak demand or the surge. There's two different profiles, and certainly the restaurant extends further into the evening, whereas the retail kind of shuts down a little bit earlier, although the retail component in the profile that was used did extend out to almost 9 o'clock as having 40% of its overall daily demand at the highest demand. So it was 42% at 9 p.m. So that's actually quite a bit. It'd be like potentially a retail use that would probably stay open a little bit later, maybe reflecting the fact that there is a restaurant nearby and it would have a little bit more foot traffic than, say, a shoe store that, would probably close at 6 or 7 p.m.
I would like to ask two quick questions of Robin just to make sure we're on the same page. There is no difference in the number of parking stalls as of now for whichever path we go with as opposed to the January 2021 memo. Is that correct? We are at 203, correct?
Currently, yes, now that the applicant is offered to at a 203rd spot, that's correct. We're back to 203 spaces.
Okay. And is it also correct to assume that flex parking will give not only the residents of the facility, not only customers who make use of retail and restaurant within the facility, but anyone else who is part of the community, a broader chance, a much more flexible chance of making use of parking within the facility? Is that not correct compared to shared parking?
I think that's a fair statement, but I defer to the professional, the transportation planner, to opine on that.
Okay.
John, if you don't
Thank
mind.
Sure.
That's fine.
Commissioner, could you rephrase that question again, just so I make sure I'm answering the question you asked?
Is it correct to assume that flex parking provides a broader use of the parking spaces than shared parking for this facility?
The flex parking provides one of the things that I guess I'm struggling with a little bit is, by the code, this concept of shared parking is really a reduction from the code requirement, whereas the flex parking is to meet what the potential demand might be of the various uses. So it's kind of looking at it from a different perspective. It's one is sort of a supply look at it, which is the shared parking, whereas the flex parking aspect is looking more at the demand side, if that's answering your question. So the flex parking is to the advantage of being able to meet any potential demand.
Okay, thank you. Do the commissioners have any other questions?
I have one question, and I think this is for both the commissioners and for staff, and perhaps even BO as well. If we were to request that the applicants add an additional parking stall, which I think is a good gesture, and I think every stall in this case will likely help, is that the kind of thing that can be done administratively, or do you believe that that's going to trigger another meeting to review the parking plan that shows one more stall in order to kind of dot our I's and cross our T's?
I'll take a swing, and Beal can correct me if I don't answer this correctly. If the design commission was interested in making a motion this evening to add one additional parking stall to the project, that motion, if approved, would be added as a condition of approval to the decision, and then it would be part of the city's final written decision that is issued for this matter coming up here in the foreseeable future. Theo, did I answer that correctly?
Yes, as far as, if I understand your question correctly, Vice Chair, as far as the additional parking space that the applicant offered, that can be included as a condition of approval. So just a motion today stating, in addition to all the approved conditions from the February meeting, we're adding, based on the new information, one additional requirement, which is the addition of parking stall 203 to the project, and include that, and state that that's based on the applicant's offer to provide the same. So, that way we would have in writing and as a condition, the acceptance of that additional offer as a condition of the project.
Thank you.
Now, is that correct? Is that your question, Vice Chair, or are you talking about a 204th parking stall?
I'm only speaking to the additional one stall that the applicants offered in this meeting.
Thank you.
The chair is open for, yes, Commissioner Czar.
I wanted to see if there was anything else, any other information provided either by the senior planner or the applicant related to any topics outside of parking as part of tonight's meeting. I say this in reference to the correspondence we received and also the open session where we had 6 members of our community raise questions and concerns, and some of which were outside of this parking issue. And I didn't know if that was going to get captured at some point within our particular agenda for this evening, or if there was opportunity or a need to address any of that moving forward.
I can, Commissioner, I'd be happy to briefly address the issue of the former business on the site that's been referred to several times, the dry cleaning business. This is something that the city has been looking into over the past several days leading up to the meeting here tonight. We have been and we continue to review any information we have on file in the record for this project related to the dry cleaning business, potential contamination issues, and/or plans to remedy the situation. The matter doesn't impede the Design Commission's ability to conduct its business here this evening. That said, however, prior to issuing that final written decision on the design approval, we are going to be bringing the dry cleaning and the contamination matter to a conclusion before we go ahead and issue that final written decision, because we do want to make sure that everything is in order as appropriate and everything has been accounted for and is sound. So hopefully that helps in relation to that matter. Were there other, I have to admit, I tried to jot some notes down of the testimony here or the public comment here this evening, but was there any other specific subject matter area you would like us to address? I'm not sure I captured everything, so.
Jeff, can I just ask one quick clarifying question? Susanna, you may want to move on to something else. I just want to confirm, when you talk about a final written decision, you're talking about the city's final written decision that accompanies the approval of the permit, correct? You're not talking about the Design Commission's approval of this project. Do I have that distinction correct?
Is the design review approval of the Design Commission, which is the final written decision that gets issued to the applicant, the parties of record, and then has the appeal rights associated with it. The other decisions that will be due by the city on this project include a building permit issuance, as well as other development permits required to actually construct the project.
Okay, so I'm sorry, then where exactly is the requirement for mitigation of the site going to fit into your written communications with the applicant? Is it in the written notes from this meeting, or is that in a different location?
Can you clarify, please? Oh, go ahead, Beal. Sorry.
If I could chime in and try to answer that. It most likely will be, if there's a environmental condition that's required, it most likely will be connected to the building permit. Your decision when you vote tonight and when you voted on February, that's not actually the official decision from the Design Commission. The official decision from the Design Commission is a written decision that staff produces based on the record and the vote to approve or to not approve or approve with conditions, right? that is produced subsequent to the meeting and that the chair of the design commission must sign. Now, that will be produced, after this meeting. However, it will not be issued until all the matters related to the environmental concerns are addressed to the city's satisfaction.
So just so I understand, thank you very much, Bayo. Just so I understand, and kind of adding to this a little bit, it's an administrative city issue that's part of the record, that is part of the overall decision from the design commission, but not something that comes through the design commission within our specific purview. Is that correct?
Well, that's partly correct. The issue here, the reason why we have authority to withhold this, the design commission, written decision until this matter is, resolved, is because one of the conditions for issuing the design commission decision is the fact that we've gone through satisfactorily through the SEPA process. And because these environmental issues may impact the SEPA that was conducted, right? We will only issue the written decision from the design commission after we are satisfied that the SEPA process was conducted properly and that no additional inquiry or reevaluation is necessary, or if the concerns will be addressed in a subsequent process, which is the building permit application.
So those are the two outcomes. Either it is a non-issue and it's applied to the design commission, or it is an issue and it's attached to the building permit.
Correct. Yes.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Commissioners, were you still working on a list of questions there from the public comment, or can I volunteer one perhaps?
Yeah, I had 4 items that I heard.
Oh, please go ahead.
One is the parking, which we're talking about in detail. The other had to do with potential contamination, which sounds like needs further review on a SEPA level. And that's something that is not going to impede our responsibilities in reviewing the application at this time, or anything we kind of be involved with in that way. There was a question about inconsistencies related to the units, which I think was addressed earlier. It sounded like a Scribner's error potentially, but if we could just get clarification on any discrepancies related to the units. And then I also heard concern about a reduction in square footage dedicated to retail space. And the way I heard it, I wasn't sure if restaurant was excluded from retail, and maybe previously it was more of an aggregated square footage takeoff. So if there can be just a review of what basically the level of restaurant/retail space was afforded throughout the process, and if there were any deviations there for clarification purposes.
So
Suzanne, can I just address one thing? Because I asked this question pretty specifically in our last design commission meeting, and it was specific to those restaurant spaces. We've heard from the public in a number of ways, in a number of places, that there's not enough provision going into these buildings to create opportunity for restaurants. And so in the last design commission meeting, I asked the question specifically as to whether the restaurant spaces that they've got basically set on each corner of the building are specific to restaurants only, or they are only just specifically set up to become restaurants, should that be what the applicant or the tenant would like to use them as, but they could equally be retail space, just as you.
I agree, Vice Chair. That's how I understood it as well. And it was characterized based on the type 1 hoods provided in those locations.
Yeah, that's right.
Amenable to restaurant use. but open to retail space. And so I wonder if there's public confusion around the distinction between restaurant plus the remaining retail, as opposed to an aggregate number called retail, and them seeing that as an overall reduction somehow. So I just thought for clarity's sake, it might be good to present those numbers again.
I did the calcs before the meeting, and I've got 7,579 square feet of retail space called out in the plans, and 5,727 square feet of restaurant space called out in the plans. That gives us a total potential retail of 13,306 square feet. Now, someone might want to check my math, and I'm sure people will, but that's what I came up with. So the retail potential of this building is well north of 13,000 square feet.
Mr. Grambois?
I guess a question that I might ask the commission is, after we kind of go through this, is whether this fits sort of the goal of the council to condense retail space. We're going from currently over 19,000 square feet of available retail space to just over 13,000. And if that's in line with the goals of our council and the condensed retail area of our code, or of our comp plan, excuse me.
Do you mean the council or the commission?
The city council has stated a goal of condensing our retail core. And I'm wondering if this reduction from over 19,000 square feet of retail to just over 13,000 is in line with the council's goal and then our comp plan of the required retail frontage.
Unfortunately, that's not a question we can answer because we're a design commission, we're not the city council. I would talk to the city council members and get an answer from them.
But we're approving a project that's decreasing available retail by over 6,000 square feet.
But we are not bound by what the city council wants to do as general goals. We are bound by the city code, and that is what we are trying to determine the viability of any development project.
Which is partly why I had to abstain last time, because I don't believe our city code is in line with our comp plan.
But to Chair Irwin's point, we are charged with, doing our best to ensure that the code is being enforced and applied properly, and that the applicants are meeting the code. That's what we have to go on, right? I understand that there's a lot of kind of discussion within the community about what it is that people would like to see, and I know that is something that's going to be addressed in the subsequent months and years to come. But at the end of the day, if the project meets code, and we believe that to be the case, then that's all we can move forward with. Right, Rich, is that kind of what you were saying?
That's my belief, and that's what we've tried to adhere to. That's what we are given the authority to do. That's it. If we're not meeting code, then we need to stand up for it. We did that when the Heinz project came forward, and had things not gotten out of hand at the third meeting that we were scheduled to have regarding the Heinz project, given what had happened at the first two meetings, we would have followed through with our adherence to the code by rejecting the project. We are adhering to the code here with respect to what we have seen regarding this project, the Jinghua project, and it is adhering to code. And that is our point. That is our goal. Are there any other questions or concerns of the commission members? Hearing none. Do I have any motions on the floor?
One more question. We kind of punted on this question of rounding for the commercial spaces. We kind of kicked it down the road. I think we're getting close to the end of the road, so I think we need to address that. And I'm not sure quite how to address it. I mean, it feels to me that like we're talking about two potential parking spaces, you know, depending on how you look at those numbers. You know, in other jurisdictions that I work in professionally, if you know, unless it's specified in the code, if it's less than halfway towards the middle point between two numbers, you round down, and if it's above it, you round up. So I believe that a reasonable interpretation in this case of that particular piece of the code would be to ask the applicants to provide one more stall. They've agreed to do that, and it sounds like we can find an administrative way to make that happen. That's one opinion. There are a number of us here. I'd love to hear from everybody else, but to me, there's in absence of a specific method within the code, you know, we have to use our own, you know, determination here at this point, and understand too that we're setting precedent with this decision. All right.
So my question then is, are we allowed to set precedent with this decision? Or I guess my general question is, can we have a motion that addresses this issue that is considered legitimate to consider and vote on this specific item?
To me, the motion is going to get captured by if we choose as a body to request an additional parking stall. I believe the intent is there. I don't think it makes sense for us to make a motion with specificity about how we are applying the code. It's going to be clear from the transcript of the meeting how we're doing it. The specificity needs to come through the code rewrite, and
that's fine. I don't have a problem with a motion if one is made regarding legitimizing the additional stall. I was more concerned about whether or not we are going to be voting regarding legitimacy. I mean, the specificity of that given stall. I don't think we should go there. I don't have a problem at all, though, with having a motion if one is put forward regarding legitimizing the additional stall.
Well, I would argue that the specificity does need to be clear that it's a commercial space, right? Because that's
was offered by the applicant as well.
That's right, and I would say that is an appropriate place to be specific.
Put forward your motion, sir.
Well, why don't I put forward an additional condition that we would apply to the previously approved conditions, see where that stands with everybody, and then we can make a final motion about the project. Rich, is that reasonable?
That's reasonable.
Okay, I would like to formally propose an additional condition of approval that the applicant provide one more commercial parking stall within the building prior to final permit issuance, and in accordance with the city standards for parking stalls, turnaround spaces, etc.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have
something like
that. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Vice Commissioner Brandt, and I want to make sure that this doesn't get us into trouble, Robin or John. I'm sorry, not John. Andrea, do we need to specify that it is a 203rd stall or simply one additional stall?
I think there's no harm in being specific and saying it's a 203rd stall.
Do you accept a friendly amendment, Vice Chair Brandt? You do. Thank you. So we have a motion regarding legitimizing requesting a 203rd parking stall as part of this project. I assume your second still holds, Commissioner Perez?
It does.
Okay. Commentary. Does anybody wish to comment on the motion? Going once,
Tracy, I know that only gets you halfway there, but we got you halfway there.
Going three
Chair,
times.
I didn't catch the amendment. Can I have the chair reread the motion that we're on currently?
Okay.
I wasn't sure how to
please.
change. I wasn't sure how to change what Colin said because
Okay.
203
What I'm
in there.
assuming, I did not voice the amendment, but I am assuming that we have a motion on the floor to request that a 203rd parking stall be made available as an additional condition of approval for the Xinhua project.
And that the parking stall be used for
correct?
commercial purposes.
And the parking stall be used for commercial purposes.
So Andrew, the only addition is that we just want to clarify that that brings the total to 203. If you have a cleaner way to
That's
put
where I was
that.
having a hard time getting it, and I need to have exactly what
that's fine
is doing for the minutes of what the true motion is. So that's what
Can you put it up on the screen?
Yeah, that's what I'm. Maybe. Why are you not giving me? Okay, is that a Word document you're now seeing? Stop.
Can you zoom in just a hair?
Yep.
Thank you.
Can you guys read that? Did I capture what you were saying, Colin?
Yeah, I don't think we need the prior to permit issuance. That's inherent in what it is we're doing.
Okay, thank you for.
Still need to get rid of that P period at the end.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Chair.
again, thank you. So one more time, commentary. Once, twice, 3 times, going to the vote. Andrea, please call the roll.
And Rich, just to be clear, we're voting on the motion, but we're just voting on the single condition of approval, right? That's all we're voting for now. We're not voting on the final approval yet. Is that correct?
I believe that's the only
okay,
motion on the table currently.
That's right.
Conditional approval is the only motion on the table. Correct.
Okay.
Andrea, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Czar? You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. I just want to be sure I understand what the vote is. Are we voting on just the wording of the condition? Or are we voting on approving it as a whole with this condition that has been written?
We're voting on adding this condition to the conditions of permit approval, was my understanding.
Because we've already approved the project in the last meeting.
That's correct, Commissioner Czar. There is no need to reapprove the project. That approval stands as of right now, unless you want that changed, which would require a motion or vote. But to leave it as approved, there's no motion or vote required.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I approve that condition, the additional condition for 23rd parking stall. Sorry, 203rd parking stall.
Commissioner Soprano?
Approve.
Vice Chair Brandt?
Approve.
Commissioner Granbois?
Approve.
Commissioner Perez?
Approved.
And Chair Irwin?
Approved.
6-0.
Thank you. Do we have any other motions that we wish to put before the floor? Going once, going twice, going 3 times, we're done. This brings us to other business. I welcome Jeff Thomas as our interim CPD director for a director's report.
Yes, Chair. I'll be brief this evening. First, I'd like to, for the matter that we've just worked on here for a period of time, I would like to thank Councilmember Jacobson as a citizen, Mr. Races, Ms. Lippard, Ms. Russell, and Mr. Acker for taking time to come speak this evening in public comment, as well as the other folks that have taken the time to craft written comments and send them to the city over the last week, couple weeks, 3 weeks, whatever that period of time is that we're spanning here with the communications that we've received. So thank you to all those people for continuing to participate with the Design Commission and with the city on the business that we do have. The second item that I was going to speak to, we actually covered in the previous discussion, which is town center related, the parking study that the council is interested in commissioning here to start this year. So again, just to recap for anyone watching at home, that is a conversation. There's going to be a scoping conversation between the staff and the city council on May 18th. And then the process will take life from there as we move forward in time. The third and final item I was going to touch on briefly, again, related to the town center, and it did come up briefly. Actually, I believe Mr. Acker might have brought it up during public comment when he cited just the general overall retail loss that the town center has seen over a period of years as we've seen properties redevelop at different points in time. And I'm sure all of you are aware, we have had a moratorium in part of the town center in kind of the southeast corner, per se, of the town center here for the last 9+ months. And the council is working towards some different ideas and potentially one or more solutions that will be able to bring that area out of moratorium. And there has been conversation as we've worked with a consultant, Community Attributes, to do some commercial retail analysis for the town center. There's been an ongoing discussion here over a few meetings now with the city council to that work that's been done, and also then looking forward and trying to figure out, what's an appropriate solution to bring the moratorium to a resolution. The concept has been brought forward by the city council, a no net loss type of concept that we're going to be exploring further here over the next several weeks and bring that back to city council for a conversation in June. And essentially what a no net loss, you hear about a no net loss concept frequently in things, environmental related features such as, wetlands and such. And then it also comes up in other areas of subject matter. But for this specifically, one of the real dawning moments, I think, for the council and for us as staff as well in this process that we've been undertaking is how there has been a continued loss of retail square footage, commercial retail square footage in the town center over a period that spans back to the early 2000s, obviously. So we are actively talking about this no net loss concept. We're doing some work here to prepare to bring that back to the council for conversation in June. And we'll see where that goes, as well as a couple of other options too that are in the spectrum of possibility at the moment that we'll continue to work on. So I did want to mention that. It did come up during public comment, and it came up a little bit here during your discussion on the regular business items. So I thought I'd mention that. For those of you that are interested in following along with that, we encourage you to follow along with the city council's conversation on that. And we're working hard on it and trying to move the matter forward. So with that, Chair, that concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any upcoming commissioner absences to report? Okay, thank you. Announcements and communications. Does anyone have anything in general to report?
Just real quick, Chair, I just wanted to remind everybody that we are in our annual recruitment process for our boards and commissions. City Clerk Deb Estrada sent another email that you all should have received this afternoon about that. We have two seats that are up, terms are up on the Design Commission. If either of those commissioners are interested in continuing on the commission, make sure you drop Deb Estrada an email voicing that wish to continue so that she is aware. And then if you have any friends or anything who would like to get involved and volunteer on the island, you're welcome to forward that email to them as well.
Okay, thank you. What does it look like so far regarding our next scheduled meeting?
To date, I believe that it is still to be determined. Robin, am I saying that correctly? I don't believe we have a date for a next meeting as of yet.
Correct. I'm still working with an applicant who is looking at a May date, but nothing confirmed yet. So I'll let everyone know as soon as possible when I have confirmation.
Okay, thank you. The next Design Commission meeting is still to be determined. There being no other business to come before the Design Commission, the time is now 7:50 p.m. Pacific time, and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy.
Thank you, Chair.